They hurt you and expected you to break, but you didn't break, you observed. And that is exactly what they never prepared for. Have you ever noticed how some people seem disappointed when their actions fail to destroy you? It's a strange thing. They wound you, betray you, reject you, disrespect you, and then secretly wait to see the damage. They expect tears. They expect anger. They expect revenge. They expect you to spend sleepless nights replaying their words inside your mind. They expect proof that they still control your emotional world. Maybe you've lived through this yourself. Maybe someone walked away when you needed them most. Maybe someone you trusted became a stranger overnight. Maybe you gave your loyalty, your patience, your kindness, only to receive pain in return. And for a while it hurt. Of course it hurt. You are human. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of chasing answers, you started watching. Instead of reacting, you started noticing. You noticed the patterns behind people's behavior. You noticed how some individuals create chaos and then pretend to be victims. You noticed how manipulation loses its power the moment it is recognized. And suddenly, the pain that was supposed to break you became a window into human nature. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Most people read those words and move on, but a few people live them. The people who survive betrayal without becoming bitter. The people who transform suffering into wisdom. The people who stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Tonight, we explore the hidden power of observation, the ability that turns wounds into wisdom and pain into freedom. Because sometimes the greatest victory is not fighting back. Sometimes the greatest victory is seeing clearly. Part 1. The moment you become the observer. There is a moment in every person's life that changes everything. Not the moment they become successful, not the moment they fall in love, not even the moment they experience pain. The moment that changes everything is the moment they finally see. At first, when someone hurts you, your emotions become loud. The mind races. Questions flood your thoughts. Why did they do this? What did I do wrong? How could they change so suddenly? Your heart demands answers while your mind desperately searches for explanations. And this is exactly where most people remain trapped. They spend months replaying conversations. They analyze every message. They create imaginary arguments in their heads. They become prisoners of a story that has already ended. But something extraordinary happens when suffering lasts long enough. One day, exhaustion replaces reaction. You stop chasing answers. You stop trying to convince people to understand your pain. You stop explaining yourself, and for the first time, you simply watch. Carl Jung believed that until we become conscious of what is happening beneath the surface, we will continue calling it fate. In other words, what appears to be bad luck is often a pattern we have not yet learned to see. Suddenly, you notice things you missed before. You notice that the person who betrayed you had always shown small signs of selfishness. You notice that the friend who abandoned you only appeared when they needed something. You notice that the people who talked the most about loyalty were often the quickest to disappear when loyalty was required. The pain has not disappeared, but your perspective has changed. Imagine standing inside a storm. When you're trapped in the middle of it, all you feel is wind, rain, and confusion. But when you rise above it, you see the entire weather system. The storm hasn't changed, your position has. This is the birth of observation. And observation is dangerous because people can manipulate your emotions, but they cannot manipulate what you clearly see. This is why silence often frightens those who expected a reaction. They were prepared for your anger. They were prepared for your tears. They were prepared for your revenge. They were not prepared for your awareness, because awareness changes the balance of power. The observer no longer needs approval. The observer no longer needs explanations. The observer simply watches reality reveal itself. And once reality reveals itself, it becomes impossible to unseen. That is the first transformation. The wound is still there, but now wisdom has begun growing inside it. Part 2. Why silence unsettles the people who hurt you. There is something deeply unsettling about a person who refuses to react, not because they are cold, not because they don't feel pain, but because they have stopped feeding the drama that others expected from them. When someone hurts you, they often create a story in their mind about how you will respond. They imagine your anger, they imagine your desperation, they imagine you chasing them for closure. In some cases, they imagine you spending months proving your worth to people who never appreciated it in the first place. Why? Because your reaction becomes evidence of their power. The more emotional control they have over you, the more important they feel. This is why your silence can become louder than any argument. Think about it. A fire survives because someone keeps feeding it wood. Remove the fuel, and eventually the flames have nothing left to consume. Human conflict works much the same way. Many people are not attached to you. They are attached to the emotional response they can extract from you, the endless explanations, the defensive messages, the attempts to justify yourself, the emotional energy. Once that energy disappears, something fascinating happens. The illusion begins to collapse. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Notice, he did not say the best revenge is to win. He did not say the best revenge is to humiliate someone. He said the best revenge is to remain different from them, to refuse participation in the cycle, to refuse becoming what hurt you. And this is where true silence differs from passive silence. Passive silence hides pain. Powerful silence studies it. Powerful silence asks, what pattern am I finally seeing? What lesson is this person teaching me? What truth have I been avoiding? As you begin asking these questions, something unexpected occurs. You stop obsessing over their behavior and start understanding your own. You begin noticing the boundaries you ignored, the warnings you dismissed, the intuition you silenced. This realization can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Because the moment you recognize your own patterns, you reclaim your power. Now the focus is no longer on them. It is on your growth. And that is precisely why some people become confused when you stop reacting. They expected your attention. Instead, you gave your attention to yourself. They expected your collapse. Instead, they witnessed your transformation. And transformation is something no manipulator can control. Because once a person begins to see clearly, they become increasingly difficult to deceive. The observer is no longer searching for validation. The observer is searching for truth. And truth has a way of making masks fall off all by themselves. Part 3. The pain was never the end of your story. There is a strange moment that arrives after every great disappointment, a moment when the pain is still present, but it no longer owns you. The memory remains, the lesson remains, the scar remains. But the suffering begins to change shape. At first, you thought the pain was the end. You thought the betrayal meant something was wrong with you. You thought the rejection was proof that you were not enough. You thought losing them meant losing a part of yourself. But time has a way of exposing illusions. And one of the greatest illusions is the belief that your worth was ever connected to the people who walked away. Think of a tree during a violent storm. From a distance, it appears broken. Its branches bend, its leaves are torn away, its trunk shakes under the force of the wind. The quote is often misunderstood. People think it means ignoring pain. It doesn't. It means discovering meaning inside pain, because suffering without meaning feels unbearable. But suffering that teaches you something becomes transformation. And perhaps that is what happened to you. The heartbreak taught you discernment. The betrayal taught you boundaries. The disappointment taught you self-respect. The loneliness taught you how to enjoy your own company. The rejection taught you that not every closed door is a punishment. Sometimes it is protection. This is why the observer becomes stronger than the victim. The victim asks, "Why did this happen to me?" The observer asks, "What is this preparing me for?" One question creates helplessness, the other creates growth. Carl Jung believed that the parts of ourselves we avoid eventually control us from the shadows. Pain forces us into those shadows. It introduces us to fears we never wanted to face: fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of not being enough. But when you observe those fears instead of running from them, something extraordinary happens. You discover they are not your enemies, they are teachers. Each fear points toward a wound, and each wound points toward healing. This is why some of the strongest people you will ever meet are not people who avoided suffering. They are people who walked through it consciously, people who allowed pain to reveal them rather than define them. And one day, almost without. Part 4. The ultimate power they never expected you to find. There comes a moment in every true transformation when something remarkable happens. You stop counting the wounds. You stop replaying the betrayal. You stop imagining what you should have said, what you could have done, or how things might have been different. And for the first time, you feel something unexpected. Peace. Not because life suddenly became perfect, not because everyone apologized, not because justice arrived exactly the way you hoped, but because you finally understand something that most people spend their entire lives chasing. Freedom was never going to come from changing them. Freedom was always going to come from understanding yourself. For so long, your attention was focused outward, on their actions, their opinions, their rejection, their betrayal, their choices. But observation slowly redirected your gaze inward, and there, hidden beneath the pain, you discovered something extraordinary. You discovered that your value never belonged to them. It never depended on their approval. It never depended on their loyalty. It never depended on whether they stayed or left. The philosopher Epictetus taught that suffering often begins when we try to control things that were never ours to control. Other people's behavior is one of those things. You cannot control who lies. You cannot control who betrays. You cannot control who misunderstands you, but you can control who you become in response. And that changes everything, because the moment you understand this, life stops feeling like a battlefield. It starts feeling like a classroom. Every difficult person becomes a lesson. Every disappointment becomes a teacher. Every setback becomes an invitation to grow. This doesn't mean you become passive. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It doesn't mean you stop protecting your peace. In fact, the opposite happens. You become more selective, more aware, more intentional. You stop giving endless chances to people who repeatedly show you who they are. As Maya Angelou famously said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And observation allows you to do exactly that. No fantasies, no excuses, no self-deception, just clarity, the kind of clarity that protects your future. Because one of the greatest signs of maturity is no longer needing people to become different before you accept reality. You simply see, and once you see, you act accordingly. That is wisdom. That is self-respect. That is power. The people who hurt you expected a broken version of you. They expected bitterness. They expected revenge. They expected emotional chaos. What they never expected was awareness. They never expected you to become someone who could sit quietly and learn from the experience, someone who could turn pain into perception, someone who could transform suffering into strength, someone who could lose an illusion and gain a deeper understanding of life. And that is why observation is so powerful. Because observation creates distance, distance creates clarity, clarity creates freedom, and freedom creates peace. The kind of peace that cannot be taken away by rejection, The kind of peace that cannot be destroyed by betrayal. The kind of peace that survives because it was built from truth. 7P. So if someone hurt you, if someone underestimated you, if someone expected you to break beneath the weight of disappointment, remember this: you do not have to prove anything to them. You do not have to win an argument. You do not have to explain your worth. You do not have to chase closure from people committed to misunderstanding you.